This is my true story. After my wife died, my days became empty. The house was quiet, the air cold, and my heart heavy. I only had one thing left, my visits to her grave. Every morning, I went there because that was the only place I still felt alive. But one morning, something changed. Something cruel. Something that made me question everything I believed about love, loyalty, and truth. What I found that day destroyed the peace I tried to build. Before I tell you what I saw, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Subscribe for more stories like mine. Every morning, I visited my wife's grave. It did not matter if it rained or if the ground froze under my shoes. I went. I always went. I carried a small cloth to clean the dust from her stone. I brought lilies, because those were her favorite. I would brush away the leaves that fell during the night, wipe the water from the letters of her name, and sit there for a while. I spoke to her in silence, my lips moving without sound, because no one else listened to me anymore. When she died, my world ended, but the world outside kept moving. The neighbors still laughed, the children still played, the buses still came and went. The air still smelled of bread in the morning, of smoke in the evening. Everything stayed alive except me. I did not know what to do with my hands anymore, so I carried flowers. It gave me something to hold, something that would not break me further. The cemetery was always empty that early. The sky would still be pale. Sometimes I heard the wind whistling through the trees, sometimes just the crunch of my shoes against gravel. I knew every path, every turn, every grave near hers. I even knew the names of the people buried around her. Some had pictures on their stones, smiling like they didn't know how close death was when that photo was taken. I often looked at them and wondered if they were missed as much as I missed her. My wife's grave sat under a small maple tree. In autumn, its leaves turned red and gold, and I would sit there watching them fall. She used to love that season. She said it was peaceful. I never liked it. To me, autumn was cruel. It was life fading slowly, pretending to be beautiful while it died. I think that's what losing her felt like. The world pretending it was fine while everything I loved was gone. Sometimes I brought a small thermos of coffee. I would pour a little on the ground beside her headstone before drinking the rest. I called it sharing. Though I never said the words out loud, I imagined her sitting next to me, her hands wrapped around a warm cup like before. But every time I blinked, she was gone again. Only the flowers stayed. The lilies, white and fragile, just like her. They'd start to wilt by the next morning, so I'd replace them. Day after day. It became my way of breathing. People told me to move on. They said I was torturing myself. They said she wouldn't want to see me like this. But they didn't know her. They didn't know what it was like to lose a woman who was your whole reason to wake up. She was not just my wife, she was my life. And when she left, she took my purpose with her. The grave was the only place where I felt close enough to remember who I was. I kept her photo in my pocket, not a fancy one, just an old, worn picture from our early days. Sometimes I'd take it out and look at it when I sat there. Her smile was small, her eyes calm. It made me believe she was still around, just out of reach. I spoke to her about small things. The weather, the ache in my knee, the loneliness in the kitchen. I said things a living person wouldn't care about. But I said them anyway, because even silence felt better than the sound of my own thoughts. Every morning was the same. Wake up before dawn, dress in the same gray coat, walk the same path, leave the same flowers, sit in the same spot. It was repetition, but not peace. It was survival. A quiet, heavy kind of survival. There was no healing, no comfort. Just a man trying to stay connected to something he already lost. I remember the way the cemetery smelled after rain, wet grass and old earth. It filled my chest, made me feel heavy and calm at once. I told myself she could hear me. I told myself she was proud that I still came. I told myself lies that kept me breathing. This was my life after her. A small world built around a grave. People fade, but habits stay. My habit was grief. It was the only thing that still belonged to me. And for 3 years, I held on to it like a man holding the edge of a cliff, refusing to fall. Every flower I placed was a promise I couldn't stop keeping. Every morning was a prayer to a God I didn't believe in anymore. I didn't expect the routine to break. I didn't think anything could surprise me again. But life is cruel. It waits until you finally stop expecting pain, and then it gives you more. 3 years passed this way. I did the same thing every single morning. The same walk, the same flowers, the same grave. My body grew older, weaker, slower, but I still went. It became more than a habit. It became my reason to wake up. I didn't eat much anymore. I didn't talk much either. But when I sat by her grave, I felt less empty. I would sit there for hours. The silence was thick, but it was the only kind of company I had left. The people around me disappeared slowly. Friends stopped calling, family stopped visiting. Maybe they were tired of hearing about her. Maybe they thought I should let her go, but I couldn't. Letting go felt like killing her twice. So I stayed loyal. Even if it meant sitting in silence, talking to a stone, whispering to the air. It wasn't madness. It was love, stretched too long, until it hurt more than it healed. I talked about the small things, the frost on the windows, the sound of the neighbor's dog barking, the ache in my bones when it rained. I even told her when I forgot where I left my glasses. I said it like she could still laugh about it. Sometimes I almost heard her voice. Not real, but close enough to make my eyes wet. That's what grief does. It tricks your mind into believing the dead still listen. The cemetery became my second home. The benches, the trees, the stones. They all became familiar faces. I started recognizing other visitors too. Some came for a while, then stopped. But I never stopped. I stayed. I was the old man people avoided because I made them think of loss. The man who couldn't move on. The one who stayed too long beside the dead. I didn't care what they thought. Let them look away. I had nothing left to lose. Sometimes the sun came out, and the light would hit her name on the stone. It would shine for a few seconds before fading again. I used to take that as a sign, like she was still watching, still waiting for me to finish my days so we could be together again. That thought gave me peace. But it also hurt, because it reminded me that I was still here, still waiting for something that might never come. I stopped celebrating birthdays. I stopped watching the news. The world outside didn't matter anymore. My world ended at the cemetery gate. People lived fast, talked loud, smiled too easily. I didn't belong among them anymore. My place was there, among the quiet and the forgotten. That's where I found something that felt close to love, even if it was wrapped in sorrow. The birds were my witnesses. They saw me every day. They got used to me. Some of them even came close when I sat down. I think they knew I was harmless, just another broken thing that couldn't leave. Sometimes one would land near her stone, peck at the ground, then fly away. I always whispered thank you. I like to believe it was her way of saying she remembered me. There was comfort in the repetition, comfort in the pain. The world outside changed, but my small world stayed the same. I thought that made me safe. Nothing unexpected. Nothing new. No more goodbyes. I told myself if I just kept coming, she wouldn't fade completely. She'd stay alive inside the routine. Inside me, I didn't realize that sometimes even the smallest change could destroy everything you've built to survive. 3 years of silence. 3 years of holding on to the same ghost. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't smile either. I just existed between the grave and the morning light. It was like being half dead, but not allowed to stop breathing. And yet, it was better than nothing. Better than facing the empty chair at home, the cold pillow, the quiet nights. The grave was cruel, but home was worse. At least here, I could pretend she was listening. I thought I knew what loneliness was before she died. I was wrong. Loneliness isn't being alone. It's being forgotten while you still remember everything. It's speaking every day to someone who will never answer. It's watching time pass without meaning. It's living for something that doesn't exist anymore. That was my life. My silent companion was death itself, wearing her name, her face, her memory. I didn't realize how fragile that silence was, how quickly it could turn into fear, how easily peace could be ripped away again. Because one morning that silence broke. Then one morning, everything changed. I walked the same path like always. The air was cold, and the ground was damp from last night's rain. My knees hurt, but I kept going. I carried the lilies in my hand, the same kind she loved. I thought it would be just another morning. Quiet, empty, safe. But when I reached her grave, I stopped. Something was wrong. Something was different. There were flowers already there. Not lilies. Red roses. Fresh. Wet from dew. Someone else had been here before me. Someone else had touched the place that belonged only to me and her. For 3 years, no one came. No one remembered her. No one cared. It was only me. Always me. But that morning, the ground looked disturbed. The petals were scattered, the soil pressed down by someone else's hands. I felt a sting in my chest, like I couldn't breathe right. I knelt down, my fingers brushing the roses. They were real. New. Placed with care. Not thrown. Not random. Someone meant it. That was the part that hurt. Someone meant it. My heart started pounding. I looked around, but the cemetery was empty. The silence that used to calm me now felt heavy and cruel. Then I saw it. A small, folded letter resting against the stone. The paper was damp, but not ruined. My hands shook as I picked it up. My eyes caught the words written in black ink. Neat, clean, deliberate. It said, "For my beloved wife, from your husband." Those words burned into my mind. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My breath turned sharp. My fingers crushed the paper without meaning to. I stared at her name carved in the stone, then at the note again. From your husband. I was her husband. I was the one who buried her. I was the one who held her hand when she took her last breath. I was the one who cried until my eyes gave up. The world around me tilted. The air felt poisoned. For a second, I thought it was some sick joke. Maybe the caretaker left it. Maybe some stranger mixed up graves. But deep down, I knew. No one else would write that. The words were too personal, too careful, too real. I felt anger crawl up my throat. Cold, steady anger. The kind that burns without fire. Someone dared to take her from me. Someone dared to call her wife. Someone dared to step into the one place I kept sacred. I pressed my hand against the stone, as if she could feel it, as if I could ask her why. But the stone stayed silent. She stayed silent. The wind picked up. The roses trembled. My lilies looked small beside them. It felt like I'd been replaced. Like my love was not enough. Like all those mornings meant nothing. Every step, every tear, every word I whispered. All erased by one note, one stranger, one signature that called her wife. I sat there for hours, staring. My body went numb. My mind kept repeating the same question. Who? Who came here? Who knew about her grave? Who called her that? I didn't leave until the sky turned gray and my legs stopped obeying me. Even then, I couldn't throw the letter away. I folded it and put it in my coat pocket. I didn't know why. Maybe because part of me still needed to believe it wasn't real. The cemetery didn't feel like my place anymore. The air that used to bring me peace now made me sick. I looked at the roses one last time before leaving. They were beautiful, perfect, and I hated them for it. I hated the way they looked beside her name, as if they belonged more than my lilies ever did. When I got home, I sat in the dark. I didn't light a candle. I didn't make tea. I just sat there, listening to the sound of my heart beating too fast, too loud. I could still smell the roses. I could still see the words, "From your husband." Something inside me cracked that day. Something that had survived all the years of grief finally broke. The dead don't come back, but the past does. And sometimes it doesn't knock. It just walks straight through your pain and leaves you bleeding all over again. That morning, I stopped feeling safe in my own memories. The grave that once gave me comfort now felt like a wound that wouldn't close. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. My hands would not stop shaking. I sat in my chair that night, holding the letter, reading the same line over and over again. For my beloved wife. From your husband. The words tore through me. They weren't loud. They didn't shout. But they hit deeper than any scream ever could. I felt small, weak, like an old man who had lived his life for nothing. I tried to think, but my thoughts slipped like water through broken fingers. I kept asking myself who could write that, who had the right to call her wife. I buried her with my own hands. I held her cold fingers. I placed her ring beside her heart. I signed the papers. I paid for the stone. I chose the words carved into it. Every part of her death had my name on it. So why did it feel like someone had stolen her from me? My chest hurt, not from sickness, but from something deeper. Betrayal that didn't make sense. It was the kind that has no answer, no face, no reason I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe someone left it on the wrong grave. Maybe the caretaker placed it by accident. But the handwriting was too careful, too personal. The word beloved looked like it came from someone who meant it. That was what scared me. Because I meant it too. I had lived 3 years inside my grief, thinking I was the only one still carrying her memory. Every flower I placed, every word I whispered was mine. I had built a small, quiet world around her death. And now someone had walked into it like they belonged there. It felt dirty, violated, like someone had entered my home and touched the things I kept sacred. I thought about the roses, red, soft, perfect. She never liked roses. She said they were too proud, too loud. She preferred lilies because they were simple, honest. That was her word, honest. And yet, there they were, red and full of lies, sitting on her grave like a symbol of everything I didn't know I couldn't sleep. I just sat, watching the shadows move across the walls, thinking about all the things she might have hidden from me. I had trusted her completely. I never questioned her. She was gentle, quiet, kind. She had secrets, but I thought they were small, harmless memories she kept for herself. Now I wasn't sure. My mind started to twist everything. Every time she came home late. Every phone call she ended too quickly. Every moment she looked away when I said I loved her, I started to see holes in the past that I had never noticed before. I hated myself for thinking like that. She was gone. She couldn't defend herself. But I couldn't stop. The thought that she might have loved someone else was like a knife turning inside my chest. I wanted to stop remembering her face, her voice, her laugh. But I couldn't. Memory became torture. The same moments that once gave me comfort now filled me with disgust and confusion. The next morning, I didn't bring flowers. I didn't even get dressed. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the letter. It looked harmless, just paper and ink. But it felt heavier than the grave itself. I kept it beside me like a piece of evidence. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I just stared. I felt like the whole world was laughing at me. The man who loved too much, who believed too much, who spent his mornings crying over a woman who might not have been his alone. The house felt different. Her pictures on the wall seemed colder. The smell of her old clothes in the closet made me sick. Everything that reminded me of her now carried a question mark. Was it ever real? Was I her husband, or just one of 2 stories she lived at once? I went to the mirror and looked at myself. My face looked tired. My eyes were dull. I saw a man who had spent years holding on to ashes, only to find someone else's handprint in them. That was the moment it truly hit me. I wasn't just grieving her anymore. I was grieving the truth. Nothing cuts deeper than realizing the love you worshipped might have belonged to someone else. Death took her body, but the letter took her memory, and that was worse. Because you can bury the dead, but you can't bury betrayal. It stays alive inside you, feeding on every thought until you stop trusting even your own heart. That morning, I swore I would find out who he was. Whoever left that note had touched something that was mine, and I needed to know how long he had been there. In her life, in her heart, in the space that was supposed to be only mine. The next day, I went back to the cemetery. I couldn't stay away. I needed to see if the roses were still there. They were. Faded now, edges dark, but still standing. The note was gone. Maybe the wind took it. Maybe someone else did. But I didn't care about the paper anymore. I cared about the man who wrote it, the one who called her wife, the one who had the nerve to touch her grave before I did. I needed to see him. I needed to know who he was. I waited near her grave for hours. The morning passed. The air got warmer. The caretaker walked by, nodding at me like he always did. He had seen me so many times before, I was part of the scenery. But that day, I stopped him. My throat was dry, but I managed to ask if he'd seen anyone there recently. He looked at me for a while before answering. He said there was a man, came early, before sunrise, tall, wore a gray coat, didn't speak, just stood there for a while, left flowers and walked away. A tall man in a gray coat. That was all he could tell me. But those words sat heavy in my chest. A tall man. A stranger who knew where she rested, who came before me. Who walked the same path I did, maybe every day, maybe just once. I imagined him standing there, staring at her name, whispering to her like I did. The thought made me sick. My heart started beating faster, but not from fear, from rage. I tried to remember if she had ever mentioned someone like that. A friend, a coworker, anyone. I went home and opened the old box where I kept her things. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside were letters, photos, small objects she used to love. I looked at them with new eyes, searching for something I might have missed before every word, every picture, every memory. I tore through them all. The house was quiet except for the sound of paper ripping and drawers opening. I was losing control, but I didn't care. Grief had turned into obsession. Love had turned into suspicion. I felt her ghost watching me, but I didn't stop. I didn't care if it was cruel. She had been cruel first, keeping secrets from me, leaving me with lies disguised as love. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Every sound in the house felt strange. The ticking clock, the groan of the floorboards, the rustle of the curtains. Everything made me think someone was there, watching. I started to imagine that man, the one in the gray coat, standing outside my window, staring in, smiling. I knew it was just my mind, but I couldn't shake the image. The thought that he might come back made my blood boil. The next morning, I went back again. I came earlier this time. The air was cold and heavy, the sky still dark. I stood near the tree, watching the path. Every sound made me turn. Every shadow looked like him. But no one came. The caretaker passed again, sweeping the path. He looked at me, maybe feeling pity, maybe fear I didn't care what he thought. I wasn't there for pity. I was there for truth. Days passed like that. Waiting, watching, searching. I stopped eating properly. I barely spoke to anyone. The world outside didn't exist anymore. Only that grave, those flowers, and that man. The anger kept me alive. It gave me a reason to keep breathing. But it also broke something inside me, because the more I thought about him, the more I started to think she must have loved him. Why else would he come? Why else would he call her wife? I began to doubt everything. The life we shared, the words she said, the way she looked at me. Maybe she had been two people all along. Maybe while I was building my world around her, she was building another one somewhere else. Maybe he was there too. Maybe she belonged to both of us, but only one of us knew. The thought made me dizzy. The chill that ran down my spine that day wasn't from the wind. It was betrayal, crawling slow and cold through my bones. It whispered things I didn't want to hear. That maybe love isn't pure. Maybe it lies. Maybe it hides. And when death takes one body, it leaves behind two broken hearts that never knew about each other. I sat by her grave again that evening, feeling empty. The anger was still there, but underneath it was something worse. Shame. Shame that I didn't know her as much as I thought I did. Shame that maybe she had loved someone else in ways she never loved me. The truth was close. I could feel it breathing behind me. But I wasn't ready for it. Not yet. I just knew one thing. I wouldn't stop until I found out who that man was and what she had kept hidden from me all those years. I tore through her old things like a man digging up his own grave. The box that once brought comfort now felt like a trap full of lies. I opened every drawer, every small tin, every folded paper she ever kept. Dust filled the air. But I didn't stop. My hands shook, my heart raced, my mind screamed for something. A clue, a name, a reason. I found birthday cards, letters from friends, old photos from our early years. None of them told me anything new. She looked happy in all of them, smiling the same soft smile I loved. But now I couldn't look at that smile without feeling anger crawl up my throat. I kept asking myself if she smiled like that for him too. I went through her dresser, checking the smallest corners, the pockets of old coats, the pages of her books. Then I saw it. An old wooden jewelry box I had never noticed before. It was small, dark, the kind of box that hides things meant to stay unseen. I opened it, expecting her old earrings or some trinket. But inside, tucked beneath a handkerchief, was an envelope. It was sealed. My name wasn't on it. There was nothing written on the outside. My hands went cold. I hesitated for a moment. Some part of me didn't want to open it. Some part of me wanted to burn it, bury it, pretend I never found it. But I couldn't. Not after everything. I tore it open, and something small fell into my palm. A ring, not hers, not mine. A man's wedding ring. Simple, silver, worn from time. Inside the envelope was also a photograph, old, faded, but clear enough to see her face. My wife, smiling, standing next to a man I had never seen before. A tall man, gray coat, the same one the caretaker described. I felt my stomach turn, my vision blurred. I dropped the photo, but I couldn't stop looking at it. His arm was around her. They looked comfortable, familiar, not strangers. My mind tried to deny it, to make it make sense. Maybe it was a cousin, a friend, a coworker, but deep down, I knew you can tell by the way two people stand together if they belong to each other. The space between them was gone. That was love, real, quiet, hidden love, and it was hers. I sat there on the floor, holding that picture like it was poison. My breath came shallow. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. My whole body trembled, all those years of visiting her grave, all those mornings talking to her stone, all those tears. Now they felt foolish. I wasn't the only one mourning her. I wasn't even sure I was the one she wanted to be mourned by. The ring rolled across the floor. I watched it spin, slow down, and stop. That small sound broke me. I realized she had kept this secret her whole life. She must have hidden it carefully, afraid it would destroy everything. And she was right, because in that moment, she destroyed me again, even from the grave. I tried to think of reasons. Maybe it was before me. Maybe she married him once, long ago, and never told me. Maybe he died, and she never got over it. Maybe I was the second one, the replacement. I thought about all the times she stared at nothing, lost in thought, and said she was fine. Maybe she wasn't thinking about the weather. Maybe she was thinking about him. The room spun. My heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't tell if I was angry or heartbroken. Maybe both. Maybe neither. I felt hollow, like the world had taken my insides and left only bones behind. The truth didn't set me free. It buried me deeper. I thought I knew her better than anyone, but that photo told me I didn't know her at all. I picked it up again. The photo had a small tear in the corner, but her smile was untouched. That smile haunted me. I stared at it for a long time, until my eyes burned. I whispered her name, but it felt wrong now. It felt like saying the name of a stranger. The love I once carried for her turned into something sharp and heavy. I hated that I still loved her, even after seeing that picture. I hated that my heart refused to stop beating for her, even when my mind begged it to. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw her with him. Every time I breathed, I smelled roses, not lilies. The truth had a smell now. It was bitter, like something beautiful left to rot. I realized then that love doesn't die when someone leaves. It dies when you learn who they really were. And once you see that truth, there's no going back. I knew what I had to do. I had to face it. Face him. The man in the photo. The man in the gray coat. The man who had been loving her in the shadows while I mourned her in the light. The world fell apart inside my chest. Everything I believed, everything I built, turned to dust. I sat in the dark with that photo in my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing but hatred. Not for her, not even for the man, but for myself. For being blind, for loving too deeply, for giving my life to someone who lived another one behind my back. The silence in the room was heavy. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was cruel. It pressed on my lungs until I couldn't breathe. The house that once held her memory now felt haunted, not by her ghost, but by the truth she left behind. I thought grief was pain. But grief was mercy compared to this. Grief is clean. It's sharp, but it heals over time. Betrayal is different. It rots. It stays under your skin, waiting for quiet moments to whisper. It tells you everything was a lie. Every smile, every promise, every touch. I sat there, remembering her voice, and suddenly I hated it. The softness of it felt fake. The warmth in her words felt staged. My love turned into suspicion. Every good thing became a wound. The night stretched too long. I didn't eat. I didn't move. I just stared at her, things scattered across the floor. I tried to put them back, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept dropping things, breaking small pieces of her life that used to comfort me. Her perfume bottle shattered. The smell filled the air, sweet, familiar, and cruel. It reminded me of how she used to smell when she hugged me, and I almost cried again. But the tears wouldn't come. I was past crying. I was empty. I sat on the floor until morning. The sunlight came through the window, soft and pale, but I didn't look at it. I didn't care about light anymore. Light was for people who still believed in truth. I didn't. Not after seeing that photo. I had spent years talking to her grave like a fool, pouring my heart into the dirt, while another man carried the same love, maybe even stronger, somewhere out there. I imagined him visiting her grave too, whispering the same things I did, believing she was only his. It made me sick. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. That was the worst part. Even after knowing what she'd done, I still loved her. I still felt that ache when I thought of her laugh, her voice, her hand in mine. Love doesn't die with truth. It just turns into poison. I was drinking it slowly, letting it burn through me. I wished I could forget her, erase her face, destroy her memory. But love doesn't go away when it's betrayed. It stays and punishes you. I walked to the mirror. My reflection scared me. I looked older than I remembered. My eyes were hollow, my skin pale. I saw a man who had lost everything twice, once to death and once to truth. There's no coming back from that. The kind of pain that takes your faith away doesn't heal. It stays, quiet, cold, always waiting. I started thinking about all the small moments. The times she said she loved me. The nights she held my hand. The mornings she smiled at me from across the table. They all came back, one after another, like ghosts showing me how blind I had been. Maybe she loved us both. Maybe she couldn't choose. Maybe she didn't care who got hurt. It didn't matter. She was gone now, and all that was left was two men living with half a truth each. The air in the house felt heavy. The walls felt too close. I wanted to scream, but there was no point. No one would hear me. No one would care. I thought about burning her things, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Destroying them felt like letting her go, and even after everything, I wasn't ready. That's the cruelty of love. Even when it kills you, you still beg for it to stay. That evening, I went back to the cemetery. I didn't take flowers this time. I just sat there and stared at her stone. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just looked. The ground felt colder than before. The wind harsher. I wanted her to appear, to explain, to lie to me one more time if she had to. But nothing came. Just silence. Heavy, empty silence. I realized then that I had become one of the dead, breathing but hollow, alive but gone. The only difference between her grave and me was the dirt I carried my coffin inside my chest. That's what love does when it breaks you. It buries you standing. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I didn't even look in the mirror. I put on my coat, the same one I wore to her funeral, and walked to the cemetery. The air was sharp, cutting against my face. The world was quiet. Too quiet. The sky was still gray, and I could see my breath in the cold. I didn't bring flowers this time. I brought the photograph, the one of her and the man. I wanted to see him. I wanted to know if he was real or just another ghost my mind had built out of loneliness and anger. I reached her grave and sat down. The soil was still damp from last night's rain. I looked at her name carved into the stone and felt nothing. Not love, not hate. Just a numbness that sat deep in my bones. I placed the photograph beside the stone. The man in the gray coat was smiling in it, the same way I used to smile when she looked at me. I stared at his face until the sky started to change color. I waited. The caretaker passed once, sweeping the path, but didn't speak. He looked at me with pity and kept walking. The air grew colder. I pulled my coat tighter. The sun began to rise, spilling pale light over the graves. I kept watching the gate. My heart beat slow but heavy. Then, around 6, I saw someone walking toward me. Tall, gray coat, same as the caretaker had said. He walked like a man carrying a weight too heavy to name. Each step slow, careful. He held something in his hand. Flowers, red roses. My chest tightened. My breath caught. My hands clenched. He didn't see me at first. He just walked straight to her grave. Then he stopped. He saw me sitting there. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. 2 men, 2 strangers, 1 grave, 1 truth between us. His face looked older up close, worn down, tired. His eyes had that same hollow look I saw in the mirror every morning. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, holding the roses like they were his only shield. I could tell he didn't expect me to be there. Maybe he thought he came early enough to be alone, just like I always did. Maybe he didn't know anyone else ever came. We didn't move. The silence between us was heavy. The air around us felt strange, like the world was holding its breath. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to shout. I wanted to grab him and demand answers. But nothing came out. There was no energy left for hate, just exhaustion, a kind that seeps deep into your soul and stays there. He knelt slowly beside her stone, opposite me. The roses trembled in his hands. He laid them down next to the lilies I had placed days ago. For a moment, I couldn't tell whose flowers belonged more. They looked wrong together, red and white, love and purity, lies and truth. His hand stayed on the stone, gentle, familiar. I saw it, the tenderness, the same kind of touch I once gave her, and it broke something inside me again. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The air said enough. His face told me everything. The pain in his eyes wasn't fake. It was real. Deep. The kind of pain that only comes from love. I realized then that he wasn't my enemy. He was me. Another version of me, living the same nightmare, holding the same ghost, crushed by the same truth. The wind moved through the trees, making the leaves whisper. It sounded like her voice for a second, soft and distant. I looked at her name again and wondered how many lies could fit under one stone. She had 2 lives, 2 loves, 2 husbands. And now, 2 broken men sitting in the same dirt, mourning the same woman, hating the same silence. He finally looked at me. His eyes were wet, tired. There was no anger there, only understanding. The kind of understanding that hurts worse than any fight could, because he knew what I knew, that neither of us won. We were both just left behind, holding pieces of the same lie. We stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing. Just breathing the same cold air, bound by the same loss. Two strangers who should have been enemies, but were instead connected by the cruelest truth a man could face. That love can belong to more than one person, even when it's supposed to be yours alone. When he finally stood, I didn't stop him. I didn't move. I just watched him walk away, his coat brushing against the grass, the wind following behind him like a shadow. When he disappeared through the gate, I looked down at the roses beside the lilies. Red and white, two colors, two hearts, one grave, one lie. He came back the next morning. I was already there, waiting. This time I didn't bring anything, no flowers, no picture, just myself. I sat in the same spot, knees stiff, eyes tired. The air was cold again, the ground damp, the world silent. When he walked through the gate, I felt my heart thump once, slow and hard. He looked the same, gray coat, heavy steps, eyes that had seen too much. He stopped when he reached me, nodded once, and then sat down on the other side of the grave. Two old men, one grave between us, nothing else. The silence felt different that day, not cruel, not heavy, just final, like the air had accepted what we both knew. We didn't look at each other at first. We both looked at the stone, her name, the date, the same words I had chosen when I buried her. Forever loved. I wanted to laugh at that forever loved. But by who? Both of us? None of us? The stone didn't answer. It just sat there, solid, cold, unchanging, holding all the lies that she had hidden from both our hearts. After a long while he spoke. His voice was low, tired. He said he didn't come to fight. He said he didn't want to take anything from me. He just wanted to see her to keep his promise. My chest ached when I heard that word. Promise. How many promises had she made? How many did she keep? He looked at the flowers on the grave, then at me. There was no hate in his face, just pain. A kind of pain that looked too familiar. He told me she never mentioned my name. He said she spoke about a husband she once loved but could never forget. She told him she couldn't break his heart again. That was me, the ghost she carried while living another life. The man she left in silence while loving someone else in the dark. She must have been torn between two lives, and instead of choosing, she kept both. One real, one hidden. I didn't know if that made her selfish or scared. Maybe both. I listened without speaking. Every word cut deeper, but I didn't stop him. I needed to hear it. I needed to understand how deep the lie went. He said she met him years before she died. She told him she was alone, that her husband had passed long ago. So he loved her freely, not knowing she already had someone mourning her in advance. When she got sick, she pushed him away, saying she wanted to face it alone. She said she didn't want to hurt anyone else. But she did. She hurt both of us. The man's hands trembled as he spoke. His eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. I looked at him and saw myself. Same grief. Same loss. Same broken hope. For a moment, the anger inside me faded. What was the point? We were both victims of her silence, both left behind to carry the weight of her lies. She said she couldn't break my heart, but she did, by trying not to. He placed his hand on her stone, fingers shaking, eyes closed. I did the same. For the first time, we shared something that wasn't hate or confusion, just sorrow. Deep, wordless sorrow. I realized that she had loved us both in her own way, and that was the cruelest part of all, because it meant none of it was fake. Every touch, every word, every moment was real, just not whole. She had split herself between two men and left both of us half alive. We sat there for a long time. The sun rose higher, touching the edges of the stone. The light made it look softer, less cruel. I thought about all the years I spent sitting there alone, thinking my pain was special, sacred. But it wasn't. It was shared. I wasn't the only man who woke up with her ghost beside him. He had lived the same pain, only in another house, under another name. When he finally stood to leave, he didn't look at me. He just nodded once and walked away. I didn't stop him. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. We had already said everything without words. I stayed for a while after he left. The air felt different, lighter maybe. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because I finally understood the truth. She had loved two men, and neither of us ever truly had her. I placed my hand on the stone one last time before leaving. The surface was cold, rough, unforgiving. I whispered her name in my head, but not with anger. Not even with love. Just with finality. Because love that lives in lies doesn't die peacefully. It lingers. It infects. It stays. And that's what she left us. Two men breathing the same grief, sharing the same wound, loving the same woman who never belonged to either of us completely. I went back one last time. I knew it would be my final visit. My body was tired, my heart heavier than ever. I didn't want to keep coming to a place that no longer gave me peace. The grave didn't comfort me anymore. It mocked me. It held too many truths, too many lies, too much of me. The air around it felt poisoned, but I went anyway. I had to. I had to see her one last time, say goodbye to the part of me that refused to die. When I reached her grave, there were already two sets of flowers. My lilies, his roses, side by side. The white and the red looked strange together, peaceful but painful, like forgiveness forced to stand beside betrayal. The sight of them stopped me. For years, I came here believing I was alone in my grief. Now I knew I wasn't. And somehow, that made it worse, because grief used to be mine. It used to be the only thing I had left of her. Now even that was shared. I sat down slowly, my knees aching. I touched the cold stone and felt the roughness under my palm. Her name looked smaller now. Time had faded the letters I thought about the day I chose them. How I stood there watching the man carve them, trying not to cry. I remembered the smell of wet dirt, the sound of the coffin lowering, the way my fingers clutched the edge of my coat so I wouldn't fall. I thought that was the worst pain a man could feel. I was wrong. The real pain came later, when I learned who she truly was. The cemetery was quiet. Only the wind moved, brushing through the trees, making the leaves whisper. I closed my eyes and listened. It sounded like her voice, faint, broken, fading in and out of the air. For a second, I almost believed she was there, standing behind me, watching. But then the wind stopped, and I was alone again. The truth has a way of doing that, showing you a glimpse of comfort before taking it away. I looked at the flowers again. His roses were fresh. He must have come that morning. I imagined him standing where I was, his hand on the stone, whispering her name. Maybe he cried. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he hated her as much as he loved her. I couldn't blame him for any of it. We were the same now. Two men ruined by the same woman's silence, two strangers bound by the same wound. I thought about the day I found that letter. From your husband. Those words had destroyed me once. Now, I understood them differently. She wasn't lying to hurt us, she was lying to keep something alive. She loved too much and didn't know how to stop. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it human. And maybe that's what love really is. Cruel, selfish, desperate. It gives and takes at the same time until there's nothing left. I stayed until the sun began to set. The light turned orange, soft, and I could see shadows stretch across the graves. I felt the cold creeping into my legs, but I didn't move. I didn't want to. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for her voice or her presence. I wasn't asking her to forgive me or to come back. I was just there to let her go. Truly, this time. I took one last look at the lilies and roses. Two lives, two loves, two stories buried in one place. I wondered if anyone would ever know what really happened here. Two husbands mourning one woman who loved them both. The world would never know. The truth would stay in the ground with her. And maybe that's where it belonged. Before I left, I placed my hand on the stone one last time. My fingers traced the letters until they blurred under my touch. I whispered a goodbye that didn't sound like love or hate. It sounded like release. The kind of goodbye that comes after too much pain. I stood slowly, my knees shaking, my breath uneven. As I walked away, I didn't look back. I couldn't. Some things are not meant to be visited forever. Some graves are not just holes in the earth. They are mirrors showing you what love does when it dies without truth. Now, I live quietly. I don't visit her anymore. I let the flowers die on their own. The lilies and the roses, side by side, fading together. Two husbands. One truth. A woman who loved twice but died once. And me. The man who learned too late that love can be both beautiful and cruel, sometimes in the same breath.